Welcome back to the channel, guys. Great to see you. So, just scrolling through a couple of publications yesterday, and the news broke online via pretty much everywhere. Blabbermouth, Loudwire, Metal Injection, pretty much everyone ran this story. Galder, lead guitarist for Dimmu Borgir, and founding member, I suppose principal member really, of Old Man's Child, has left Dimmu Borgir after 25 years of faithful service to the band. Yeah, it's a bit of a sad time for myself anyway. I quite liked Galder and his contribution. I'm quite a big fan of Old Man's Child. From what I understand, I think he is basically going to focus on Old Man's Child. The interviews themselves, or the interview itself, the transcript I read for it, it wasn't super clear on that, on his motivations for leaving the band. But it seems like that's what his future plans seem to be centered around Old Man's Child, which I'm all up for. I really enjoy Old Man's Child, generally speaking, stylistically, and have enjoyed most of their records. There's been a few ups and downs, but you know, generally speaking, I really like what he does with that project. I've enjoyed most of Dimmu Borgir's work up until probably the most recent record, but yeah, generally speaking, I enjoy the band. Now, I know in the black metal community, Dimmu Borgir is maybe just not quite black enough, right? You know, it's symphonic black metal with some, I suppose, melodic death tinges to it, I suppose. You know, yeah, it's not sort of core black metal or traditional black metal in that sense, but for my personal taste, I generally enjoy most of the work that they've done over the years. Anyway, the reason I decided to make this video was because, you know, I sort of went scrolling through the comments just on these various websites, and I don't know if this is a case of people who've got something bad to say speak the loudest, you know, that sort of thing, but there generally seems to be quite a lot of negativity towards Galder in the context of Dimmu Borgir, and I thought that was really interesting. I didn't really realize quite so many people disliked having him in the band. Now, this was coming from people talking about it from a lead guitar perspective. There's a lot of like back and forth about lack of solos in Dimmu Borgir and whether or not Galder's a good player, and a lot of people seem to take the tone that he's not a very good player, which I dispute. I definitely dispute that. The inevitable comparison is to compare him to Astenu. And if you're not familiar with Astenu, is an Australian lead guitar player who served in the band, particularly on Spiritual Black Dimensions, where there's quite a lot of lead guitar work, which is quite uncharacteristic, I would say, generally speaking, of black metal. Black metal's not really the kind of genre that is like really focused super on like soaring leads, you know, with like intricate, complex lead lines. Now, I really enjoyed that record, Spiritual Black Dimensions, probably in my top 3 Dimmu Borgir records for myself personally. Being a guitar player, that I kind of resonated with that. So I really do appreciate the argument of, you know, if you were really into that and then Galder came in and then there were relatively few to no solos. There were few, there wasn't no solos, but the solos that were there were more like melodic lines. They weren't flashy solos, let's say that. They were like lead breaks, if you will, and there were reasonably few of them. When you watch them play live, he would do little improvised moments and things like that here and there. I guess just being the lead guitar player he is, he couldn't help it, like adding a fill here and there, that sort of thing. But I think to write him off as not being a competent player is definitely a step too far. The guy is definitely an accomplished player, and yeah, I found it really surprising. I would like to know in the comments, you know, what did you think of his playing for Dimmu Borgir? Do you think that solos are appropriate in the context of Dimmu Borgir? Would you like to see more lead guitar work? Or do you think that Shagrath and Selenos make the right call to focus on the sort of symphonic composition of things? And yes, there would be an occasional lead break, like lead line, but it wouldn't be like a Yngwie Malmsteen try to blast your face off and play, a million miles an hour, almost sort of neoclassical kind of approach, which is a little bit closer to what Steno was doing in the context of Dimmu Borgir, which he demonstrated could work. But when I listen to something like puritanic euphoric misanthropia, something like that, I'm not sitting there missing solos. I've got to be honest. I don't think the compositions suit having a solo. I think if you were to put solos in there, it would sound like they've been shoved in there for the sake of having a solo. And I don't think that's the right approach to take. And I just generally don't think that the band, their kind of sonic core, if you will, stylistically speaking, I don't think it calls for solos outright. Now, if they were to sit down and write a record of that where they were like, oh, we want some lead guitar stuff going on here, we want some solos, and they purposely set out to craft the compositions to support that, that's different, because then the compositions are going to call for it. And I kind of feel like that's kind of what happened with Spiritual Black Dimensions. They were like, we've got this great guitar player, and we're going to write this record to feature some of that, in the same way that on Puritanical Euphoric Misanthropia there's a lot of bits of it that are there to facilitate the use of ICS Vortex's voice. They're like, we've got this amazing singer in the band, it would be criminal not to use that. Obviously would have been one of the key points of bringing him into the band, so yeah. So anyway, I was just really surprised to kind of go online and see that there's quite a lot of negativity towards the guy, and there definitely seems to be this misunderstanding, I think, that just because he doesn't play a lot of technically demanding lines with Dimmu Borgir, that he can't play those lines, and I don't think that's right. I think if you watch the guy play carefully, you can see that there's technique there. There's decent technique there. And then if you go more broadly and you listen to Old Man's Child and things like that, there's more of it, because that's his own project. In Dimmu Borgir, you would say it's like kind of not his place to interject and go, well, guys, I think there should be a solo here. I think it's just not what it's called for. When he joined Dimmu Borgir, they already had the core of their sound, their vision of what they wanted to do. And he would have walked in there and been pretty professional about that and accommodated it. There's a core kind of writing team there, or partnership. So you don't just waltz your way into the door and try and upheave everything. Old Man's Child is a little different. That's his baby. So whatever he sees fit is the direction that it can take. But yeah, I just thought it was really interesting, and I'd like to know in the comments what people think. So yeah, do get in touch. Keen to hear from you, and until next time, take care. Bye bye.